What is the creepiest thing you've heard a child say? We asked my 5-year-old cousin who she was talking to in the den. She said with excitement I was showing Pap my dolls he had passed that morning but we hadn't told her yet. A kid leaned over to me in church once and whispered, "For a minute there I thought you were a cyclops." My high school girlfriend has a little brother who was like 3-4 at the time. One day we were babysitting him and playing with cars on the floor. Out of nowhere, he starts looking really concerned and looking around. We keep playing, but he stands up and walks straight into the garage. We followed him in there and he just kept looking toward the wall and started crying. My girlfriend kept asking him what was wrong, and he, through all of his weeping, he gets out. He says I am his. Still freaks me out just thinking about it. Every time I took my toddler out for a walk he would look up at the sky and say fire and extend his arms up motioning to the whole sky. He did this every single time he stepped outside and would repeat it throughout the walk. Turned out that he would watch this cartoon that teaches him about the solar system and it always showed the sun as a big ball of fire. I used to teach swimming lessons for preschoolers, and we had this one kid named Cass who was the cutest little guy ever. Also one of the only one brave enough to let us take him out in the deep end with a life jacket on. Well, one day I was swimming slowly with him holding onto my shoulders and I could hear him talking to himself. I wonder what he'd smell of if I burnt him up. I think the little guy was talking about me. When mommy kisses me goodnight she puts her tongue in my mouth. My friend babysat a little girl and told me she said this. When I started dating my wife, her 4-year-old niece looked me dead in the eye and said if you make her cry we'll take you out into the woods and leave you there. Little girl by herself at the pool and starts diving and swimming near our group. She looks over at us and says I live in your nightmares, then dove into the pool and we didn't see her again. You think I'm sexy? A second grader asking me as I was fixing a computer. WTF is with these kids today? I had to just ignore because these damn kids could lie and would have probably told their teachers and parents if I said anything and I would have been in deep poop because it's a kid's word against mine. I was working at a kid's summer camp and had to go with this 6-year-old boy to the bathroom. While he was washing his hands he looked at me while smiling and said, "Is your dad dead?" Dart. I looked at him and said no. He's not. Then the kid said, "Well, why isn't he?" Dart. Wasn't sure how to respond to that. When I was babysitting for my neighbors, a kid walked up to me and said he's coming. When I asked who, he just pointed at the door of the living room. Truth story. This creeped me the frick out. I worked as one of those people who will try to sell you crap you don't need. Except it was food. So my job had me a different food item every workday that I would try to convince people they needed to buy. This particular day, it was cream cheese. So, what is the easiest thing to do with cream cheese? Bagels. So I'm doing cream cheese and bagels and I have customers coming up to me. Different flavors of cream cheese, yada yada. Then I see a regular and her kid. Now I've experienced this regular and her 5-year-old several times. And the kid seems kind of off. Maybe a bit slow. Maybe? No. TLDR, that child is a freaking psychopath anyway, so I'm asking him what flavor he wants. He tells me. And he says, "I want to watch you put it on the bagel. Are you going to use a knife?" Hairs on the back of my neck stand up and I'm like, oh. Okay. So I start to put it on there and he says, "Go slower. I want to see what it looks like when you go slower." Oh my god. Year 5. Take your bagel and cream cheese. Just thinking about that day makes me shiver. That child is going to grow up to be something evil. My wife's niece had an imaginary friend when she was 2-3 years old. Not unusual on the surface. But her imaginary friend had the same name as her grandfather who had died 15 years prior. And she seemed to know stories from her dad and aunts, my wife's, life when they were kids. The biggest thing was her friend had died after being shot. Which was how her grandfather died. So I was talking to this little girl about her friend and she said, "Yeah, Name, says he can come down from the clouds whenever he wants. He just has to sneak out. Double quote. I'm tired. Normally, that wouldn't be creepy. But this particular kid attended a day camp that I signed for. And I happened to have been told by the staff that he was prone to seizures. And that right before they happened he would say he was tired. So I led the kid to the counselor and he said I'm tired of playing with these toys. Kid got me all freaked out for nothing. 4-5 years old came up to me and was pointing towards the arcade room. Come play with me. I said I'm busy. I'm sorry. Go ask, insert girl name. The little girl was like, if you don't come play with me I'll choke myself. Dart. Then just stared at me. Then eventually left. My son. At the age of 5. Talking about Minecraft, I killed the creeper and then burned down his house. Oh. I should have burned down his house with him inside it. Doing both things at once. Yeah. I don't even know where you've been playing Minecraft. But you need to take a break from it for a while. Figuring out how to best kill someone and destroy their property is not a skill you need quite yet. Who is that white guy that always comes in my room at night? Okay. A kid I used to go to school with was obsessed with me, to the point of stalking me, and he tried to force me to be his girlfriend. When I told him no, he said he'd break into my house and make me his forever. Let's play Poison the Baby. My little sister used to look out the window in the car, and sometimes at home, and talk to herself when she was 3 or 4. When we asked who she was talking to she would say my friend Kelly in the clouds. And when we asked why she was in the clouds, she would say because her mom gave her too much medicine. Not overly creepy. But the same year, my stepmom got pregnant. And she asked all of the older siblings for name suggestions. And she decided to go with my sister's choice of Kelly. My sister was threatened by a 5-year-old in 1995. He went up to her with a butter knife and said he'd slit her throat if she didn't give him her Alanis Morissette CD. I was playing D&D at a co-worker's house. His quiet 9-year-old daughter tugged on my sleeve, so I assumed she wanted me to get her some food. Instead she led me to their Great Dane kennel and said in a loud, suggestive voice, I'm a bad doggy. Please spank me, master. Double quote. I work at a preschool. Over the years I have heard the kids say some creepy funny things. One little boy who was 5 always had strange things to say. One afternoon I was leaving to go home and on my way out I said goodbye to him and he stared at me, then responded with, why are you saying goodbye? Are you going to die? This is the same little boy who would try and grab teachers' asses. This happened to me at work last week. So my coworker and I were looking at some kids when they walked away and one yelled, come on. We need to have the funerals. There was one girl left behind and when we looked at her and said what she said. I don't know. Something about having funerals for their babies that died in their stomachs. They're weird. My coworker and I stared at each other and they said, well, that's disturbing. The girls were around 8 years old maybe. A friend of a friend brought their 3-year-old grandson to our house. The kid picked up a small metal shovel and said to another 3-year-old little girl that was there with her dad, I'm going to break your freaking head in with this shovel. As soon as he realized we had heard and seen what was going on, he put the shovel down to pretend that nothing happened. We alerted both adult parties, but unfortunately there doesn't seem to be any real consequences for this kid. I was on the bus and this little girl and her mom get on. She takes one look at me and bursts into inconsolable tears. Her mom is doing everything she can to make her stop, but all to no avail. Eventually the mom just says frick it and takes the kid off the bus. But the kid starts wailing more and says, Mama, don't go. That girl is gonna die soon. I was a little sketched out for the rest of the day. My niece and I were playing with my son at my mom's house. We were having a nice Power Rangers battle with the old school weapons my mom kept for me to give my children. My niece had the little red sword and started poking me with it. I told her to stop and that it wasn't nice. She told me, "You can't talk. I died you." Double quote. I babysat a kid once that told me he wanted to put his dad in one of those bags that suck the air out of it and run the dad over with a four-wheeler. A friend got his 2-year-old a lettuce knife so she'd stop asking to use real knives. One night she looked around the corner with the knife in hand. Asked to take it to bed and when they said she half sang "I know where you sleep. I love you." Created an account for this. I was hanging out with an ex-GF in my parents' living room a few years back when my little brother, approximately 10 YO at the time, walks into the room looking a little bit dazed and confused. He was sleepwalking a lot around this time. He goes straight to the large front window and just stands and stares. I asked him, "Little bro's name, buddy. Are you okay? What are you looking at?" And his reply was them. "They're watching. They'll be here soon." Double quote. What the frick is wrong with kids these days? There was a set of demon twins when I worked in after school daycare. They looked tired one day. And when someone asked what was going on, they said, "We have nightmares about people getting cut up." Double quote. But still. Creepy. On a shopping trip to Lowe's, my son told me that we couldn't leave out of a certain set of doors because they were broken. There was a sign on the door, but he's not able to read yet. So I asked him how he knew the doors wouldn't work. He said, "The lady with the long hair you can't see told me." My brother was once wrestling his friend for fun. They were 13ish years old. His friend grabs him around the neck and yells, "Die on the cross like a white person." I once heard my friend's 4-year-old son tell his brother that if he didn't do what he wanted he'd put him in a wheelchair. Double quote. We once got a call from my little brother's elementary school asking about the household and if his family life was okay, since he had been doing math and writing word problems about subtracting enemy students from the rest of the class. I was reading to my niece in bed one day and she had a shelf above her bed that was pretty empty. She made a comment about the guy up there and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she pointed to that shelf and reiterated that there was a guy up there. I was a terrible aunt and just said, "Well, good night." I knew it wasn't real, but hearing a 3-year-old be so sure of something was too much for me and I bailed. My 7-year-old niece said to her then pregnant mother, "It's not a baby in there. It's a monster and when you go to sleep he climbs out and talks to me about blood." Mom and dad rule the house, but God and Santa rule the cities. My sister's kids are great. Kid I used to babysit, getting frustrated while trying to put together a puzzle. I wish Sarah was here to help. She's really smart, but sometimes she's too busy to come see me. I didn't know of any Sarahs, so I asked his parents about it when they got home. It turns out that Sarah was the name they had given to the daughter they miscarried a few years before their son was born. They had never told him about the miscarriage. Makes you think. I see dead people. I want you to lunge me. What I've learned from this thread: when babysitting children, Satan likes to hang around. I'm going to make you dead. Then I'm going to make you into a cake. This from my sister, who was around 5 at the time, after I refused to give her back the pacifier that she'd found. Hey you. Thanks for watching Reddit Stories. If you enjoyed the video, consider hitting like and subscribing. Your support means a lot. We also have a Discord community where we will be running giveaways and fun surprises throughout the year. Come along and meet some new friends. You look great today.